Well, 2025 has been a bonkers year, hasn't it? As I sit down and reflect on that year, I thought about 3 products that have really come of age in 2025 and have probably got the potential to become very common going forwards. And this is a video that sort of celebrates those 3 things, a look back on where they've come from, where they are now, and what we might expect from these 3 exciting products going forwards. Now, I've just got this graph here of the early adopter craze. And what I mean by this video, things that I think have gone past this innovation stage, things that get launched on Kickstarter, get floated around, maybe a few prototypes pop up on Pro Teams and Spy Shots. We're talking about stuff that have gone into the early adopter stage, things that you guys are probably buying. It might be those of you that are running 40mm tyres, the few of you that are running hookless technology, for instance. Some of those technologies go beyond early adapters and become big mainstream technology. Others just fade out and die. They don't gather the traction. So this is a video where I think there's 3 bits of tech which are almost certainly become a big part of cycling culture going forwards. Now, the first one is the carbon spoke. Now, the reason that this is in here is probably the launch that DT Swiss, that famous, very conservative German brand, who make their own spokes, have now launched a wheel using a third-party spoke brand from Vonoa. That is, for me, pretty monumental. That is a sign that a big brand like DT Swiss has recognised that they are not a part of the early adopters, that they need to catch up with that, that early majority, get in with the party, so to speak. Now, carbon spokes have taken a long time to get where they are now. We had the Mavic Arcis round carbon spoke, had all sorts of problems. Then we've had carbon spokes have been bonded into the hub from people like Lightweight and other Mavic actually. And I think Windspace and Giant Cadex were probably one of the first ones to really start using just a carbon spoke as we know it today, like this. And now almost every Chinese wheel brand that we see launch comes with carbon spokes, and almost every announcement now from a big Western brand is almost about them getting in on the carbon spoke bandwagon. But interestingly, no one's really making carbon spokes in the West anyway. Sapin, DT Swiss, Sapin tried for a little while, but it hasn't really gone anywhere. Vonoa is really the big name, German brand, and probably the one that's getting the most traction other than the brands who are doing their own proprietary stuff. Carbon spokes comes with loads and loads of problems. If they have any chance at all of breaking out of early adopter into early majority, there's quite a lot of problems that we need to solve with carbon spokes, mostly around how we fix them, what us mechanics in shops understand about it. Because right now, you, the early adopters who are running carbon spokes, you're probably benefiting from that technology, but also the downsides are that if you had to get that spoke replaced, very few shops really know what to do with them, or they might end up having to send them away to a service centre. Now, as we go from early adopter to early majority population, that isn't going to cut it. We're going to need some way of getting wheels fixed faster. We need shops to be trained up or service centres to have a faster turnaround, shipping to be easier. Wheels are awkward to ship. It's not going to cut it in the early majority. So what do we need to know about carbon spokes? Well, one of the biggest problems we have with them is tensioning. There is no real way of knowing what tension they should be at or how to get them there. And some of the tools involved are not common in a lot of bike shops. They also range massively in quality. So I've got a few spokes here. These ones are from Farsports. You can tell, got some shots up on the screen here. There's a little F, capital F, on the end of the spoke. This is a Farsports one, and these are really rigid. These don't bend very much. If you try and twist and deform them, they just spring back into place. Really good spoke. They are pretty much a copy of the Vonoa spoke. You put these next to each other. Now, there are differences. The Vonoa one is thinner, it's a little bit more flexible, and it's these characteristics that are making it very hard for bike shops to know what tension a spoke is at, what tension should it be at, because we can't really make a chart like we can do with the Park Tool TM1. You're going to need to use the tools that we've demonstrated here, where we take a spare spoke, measure it, transfer the deflection reading from the wheel to the spoke gauge, etc. Not all bike shops will do it. In fact, I don't know anyone. We might actually be a population of one. If you're a bike shop with that technology, let me know, and you'll play around with this. Please get down in the comments. Let people know that you are competent at working with these carbon spoke stuff. Now, my biggest concern, this is a little bit for the guys at the Nero show, to be fair, is this is a spoke from an Elite Drive 2. And you can see here, this is significantly wider and no branding on it at all. This is their own brand spoke, but it is really plastic. So you can twist it and it stays deformed. Really, really strange. Then you can twist it back again. Very, very strange characteristic of a spoke. Also, when we've been measuring these without a tyre on, these are coming in at around 167 kilograms of force. That is a huge amount of force. Just, you know, if any of you are out there going to the gym, just imagine what 167 kilograms of force looks like. That's sort of beyond my maximum deadlift. Normally a spoke is 100, 110, maybe 120 would be considered high. To go to 167 is utterly insane. You need some quite specialist tools, because these are only little lightweight aluminium nipples. Getting that tension on there with tools is actually fairly tricky. The biggest problem with these is that they then detension. You put a tyre on and they lose 50 kilograms of force, and then they become safe. So if you don't get this cranked all the way up to 167, you have the potential where you lose an awful lot of tension. So for me, this just isn't cool. In fact, we already broke one. You might remember the video that we did, and they splinter like this. So not all that impressed with these ones from Elite Wheels. Sorry guys, if you boys at the Nero show, go back, watch that video again. There's more details in there than I think you probably caught the first time round. For those of you that are interested, the way that you need to adjust these is this is the Elite. You are going to need a 5.5mm hex, but it needs to be very, very thin walled. This is the one that Park Tool make, and their 5.5 is probably a little bit thick for some wheels that we've come across. So sometimes you need to get something a bit more specialist like this that will fit in there. Now, the thing that most bike shops are getting wrong is they don't know about this, because on the outside here, as you can see, there is actually something that looks like a nipple that you can turn. Don't turn that. Do not, whatever you do not turn that. This is just there to hold the spoke in place. And you're going to need to have a very, very precise tool. So this is your setup. And you're going to use this to hold it in place, and you're going to adjust your spoke here. You can see this is so tight. It's so nerve-wracking making an adjustment. It just feels like every single time you turn it that you're going to just ruin the spoke nipple. I've been using this wheel to experiment on, and it just makes me so nervous every time I've touched it, and I've, like I say, I've broken a couple in the process. But what are you going to do with this? Are you going to send it back to China every time you need your spokes replaced? Now, to make things a little bit more complicated, there are other brands out there like Scope who are using completely their own spokes and not supplying us with anything. So I've asked the guys from Scope to send me a spoke that I can put in my jig and I can measure it. And they said no. They said, if you break a spoke with a Scope wheel, it goes back to them. They're the only people that will repair it. Interestingly though, what is that they do supply the tools. So when you buy a set of Scope wheels, you'll get this little 5.5mm tool here, and you'll get this little tool as well. So I don't know if you guys can see, that's going to focus or not, but the nipples are actually internal on this. So you need to engage the tool here. And then go in with the nipple driver here, and that is how you would adjust that. Now, we've got a full review coming up on these Scope AirTechs. This is sort of the Gen 2 version, if you like. We've been waiting for so long. It was almost 2 years ago that we first saw these at the Roulair live show, and we're asking for a set to come in for a test. Sort of the first batch, if you like, got really swallowed up by those early adopters, and I've definitely had some problems. Since then, the hubs are now being made here in the UK in Silverstone. They look pretty similar, to be fair. I've got like a Gen 1 hub here in front of me, and trying to see the difference is pretty minor. I'd argue that potentially the new one is slightly rougher finish, so maybe they're not doing quite as much polishing on it. I don't know. Very aware of the picture that Hambini posted, but I mean, the nice thing is they're from the Netherlands. They've got a fantastic warranty on them. They're captive. As long as they don't fail catastrophically, you should have a very good warranty and backup support on that. So anyway, look out for the full review coming up. I mean, since we're talking about early adopters, we should probably talk about, is carbon spokes actually going to be a thing, or are we all going to be riding around on things like this, tri-spokes and just one big monocoque carbon construction of a wheel? I wonder which way it's going to go. Okay, next up, TPU tubes. Now these, I think, have definitely had their time in 2025. This is the year that it's just become so common. I think most bike shops you walk into now will have these hanging on the shelf for sale in probably a variety of different types and prices as well. Whereas before, you probably only had these. These are the tubalitos. These were the only ones for a long, long time. These were being picked up by, adventure type athletes who wanted a very lightweight spare tube. RJ Catkinson used to run them in his jump bikes. He wanted a very lightweight jump bike. Hill climbing specialists, that sort of thing. They weren't really hitting the main market. And if they were, it was only because we wanted something in our pocket or in our saddlebag that was super lightweight, just in case our tubeless let us down. Now, Tubalito got challenged. Loads of other brands came out with it. This is the Pirelli. They're probably the most famous for the big brand copying it. They're still pretty expensive, but they're coming out with tougher, lighter weight ones. We've now got ones which have got like proper aluminium valves in it. I'll come on to that in a second as to why, but they took weight out of it and all sorts. And now we are seeing Zip. They came out with that wheel with the pressure sensor built in. They've even made their own ones with all the little O-rings on there so that you can use them with the pressure sensors as well. And of course, Ride Now, which was, a little unknown AliExpress brand, now all over Amazon. You don't have to buy these off AliExpress anymore. They are literally everywhere on Amazon. And now we're at the point where, shops are now doing their own branded ones. We had a brand come around and said, hey, Paul, do you want to have your own Mapdeck branded TPU tubes? You can do this, and lots of shops have. You've got Condor Cycles, etc. Sigma Sports are all doing their own, in-house branded TPU tubes, and they're getting super cheap. Almost, probably cheaper now than latex tubes are. So the other bit of tech that has changed with this is, but he says, left it on the shelf. The fact that there's a few brands now that are making tubeless fluid that you can put inside a TPU tube and get the best of both worlds. So the downside for tubeless, the thing that people hate about it, is the fact that it's messy. Personally, I've been using tubeless now since, I think about 2007 on the Stans wheels. Might have been the Mavic UST before that in mountain biking. Tubeless has just been a big part of my sort of cycling career. And I was definitely only really using TPU tubes as something I put in my back pocket. This is something I'm experimenting with at the moment. I'll let you know how it goes. But this is a Cafe Latex Veggie Latex. It's meant to be one that's like latex free, but the benefit of it is that you can inject it into a TPU tube. So you kind of get the benefits of something that self-seals if you get a thorn in there, but you don't have all the mess associated with a tubeless wheel that sort of failed and tubeless fluid goes everywhere. I will keep in touch as to how this goes. If anyone's actually used this, had some success with using sealant inside a TPU tube, I would love to know. Get down in the comments, please. Let me know what you have found works. This is still very early adopter tech for me. And then finally, the piece of tech that really ties all this together for me is this. This is the battery powered inflator. This has been an absolute game changer. Just a couple of years ago, there's probably Psych Plus who were sending out these to YouTubers left, right and center. We had one. It didn't last very long. It burnt out. Now there are so many brands. We've been using the Topeak one, the Presto one. There are people out there that have made videos doing complete group tests on which one they think is the best. This one might not have won. I don't know. It's one that I've been using for a long time and it seems to work. I still think this is relatively new tech, and I think the prices of these are going to come down a lot going forwards, because I think, you know, demand and more brands getting involved in it are going to make it a lot more competitive in the marketplace. I think this is going to almost completely eliminate the need for carrying CO2 gas canisters, maybe only a couple of niche type races where you might want to have a really fast tyre inflation. For me, this little Topeak one, I'm getting about 4 tyre inflations out of it. So for me, it's about the same sort of size and bulk as carrying 2 gas inflators, but I've got the reassurance that I've got 4 attempts at it. And yeah, and also I like the fact that it's got a little screen now. That's made a massive difference. So before I even set off, I can just very quickly check, you know, some of my tyres that I run now, very low pressure. So it's nice just to go, yep, that's exactly 67 PSI or 58 PSI, because modern tyres now, with, you know, difference between 58 and 62 PSI is actually quite a big difference, you know, never used to be. So yeah, I think, watch out. These are going to be absolutely everywhere in 2026. There we go. There's my 3 killer products of 2025. If you were going to add to the list, what would you add? What do you think has really come of age in 2025? What tech do you see at the early stages of innovation right now, which we think we might make in this video in 2026, and seeing what tech might have the opportunity of breaking into mainstream? All right, hope you enjoyed this little chatty video. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take it easy. See you on the next one.